How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? What's the real truth about Citizen Kane?
It'll probably turn out to be a very simple thing.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I'm Parker.
And I'm Max.
And welcome back to another episode of Better Than Citizen Kane, the highly subjective show where we look at a movie and ask that titular question. Because when every movie ever made is a reasonable contender for the title of greatest film of all time, you have to wonder, better than Citizen Kane.
But this week, there's no need to wonder better than Citizen Kane. You must only concentrate and recall all your past life. When a man thinks of Rosebud, he becomes kinder. Wouldn't you say, Parker? Anyway, this week we've been tackling one of the great behemoths. I don't know why I wrote that. Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker from 1979. I have no idea what I meant by that, but I think it makes sense.
Sure.
This is one of those greatest movies of all time.
It's totemic, you know?
That's already a better word, Parker. You're writing the intro next time. And I'll edit the podcast. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
The workload here is severely unbalanced, but...
Here we are.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. Would have seemed mean if I had admitted it and then said, here we are. Stalker, Parker.
Yeah.
Do you identify more with the stalker, the writer, or the professor?
The dog.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Parker. I might need you to explain some of this movie to me.
Okay.
I'll
try.
Okay. For a second, I thought your reaction was... Okay?
Okay,
Like, that wasn't
actually just
clear
didn't
to you?
get it? No, I will do my best.
By the time when the dog showed up... look, everyone, I'm not the smartest man in the world. I'm not smart. I am. But not about Stalker, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky in 1979. This came after a tumultuous 70s for him. Just seems like he was going through a bit of a rough time at the time. That being said, it's also the decade in which he made Solaris and Mirror, so at least he made two of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, you know, it's maybe the best case for like suffering breeds great art.
Yes.
It's not a life philosophy I subscribe to, but then I look at Tarkovsky and I'm like, well, maybe.
And he ended the 70s with Stalker. This is his fifth feature film. It's also his, let's see here. Well, it's the last he made in the Soviet Union before throwing in his lot with the West, according to, let's see, who wrote the Criterion essay here? I pulled up the Criterion essay for this movie, because again, I liked this movie. I thought it looked fantastic, and it seems like it's dealing with some very big things. It's by Marc Lefanu. I don't know how to really say that, which... If it's French, it's embarrassing because I took French in college.
I'm always shocked whenever you bring that up. You're like, I took French in college, and then seem a bit lost in the mix whenever it comes up.
I don't know. Look, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, all right.
I was a different man. Anyway. Knowledge of Stalker before you watched it for this, Parker?
Mostly just knew by reputation, you know. Yep. I've seen Mirror.
Oh, have you?
I have, yes.
Oh, okay.
But that's it. I have not seen any of the rest of his work. I've been interested in Solaris for sure. And
yeah.
I know that you enjoy Solaris.
I do.
But yeah,
I've seen Solaris, Mirror, and Stalker, and I would say that. You know, recognizing the reputation of Mirror in particular, or The Mirror, depending on where you're reading the title.
That's never been clear to me.
It's never been clear to me either, Parker. That's just not a movie for me. I think it is incredible to look at, but it's just not necessarily what I'm always interested in. And then I worry that people hear that and they go, so Max likes the movie equivalent of like a board book for babies? And I go, yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, all this to say, I really like Solaris. Solaris and Stalker both grapple with science fiction, and like Tarkovsky's take on all of this is very much more like Stalker is way more a Tarkovsky film than it is a science fiction film. And like, it feels like, from what I've read, it seems like this is him kind of doing what he was really kind of maybe not trying to do. Obviously, they're very different films, but this almost feels more of like okay, this is where I want to be genre-wise. I don't like Solaris leans a lot more genre.
Totally.
And unfortunately, that's why I like it a little bit more. But it's still very heady and very philosophical, and I do really enjoy Solaris. But anyway, I hadn't seen Stalker before either. This is one of those rare moments, one of those rare treats where Parker and I have both not seen the movie until the podcast.
Great fan of when those happen.
Big fan of these, and I don't think there's another one for the rest of the year. So
I don't think so. Again, it's tough. It is tough. A very slim Venn diagram that we have. It is,
yeah.
Because if one of us hasn't seen something, usually the other has picked that up somewhere in our oeuvre. So
right,
yeah. It's always a bit odd to come across these, for sure.
We need our guests to come on and bring a film that we've never seen before. Anyway. Okay, great. What did you think of this, Parker?
I enjoyed it. I'm in the same boat of like, the best way I can put this is that, like we talked about with Jean Diamant, slow cinema is something that I respect the hell out of and is not really my personal taste. You know, yes. It's one of those things, it's kind of like, oftentimes when I go to see exhibits in like a museum of modern art, I can appreciate the artistry going on, but the particular artwork there isn't really for me. You know, like I can look at it and say, okay, I understand that there is intentionality and thought process put behind this and artistic intent, even if it isn't my personal kind of purview. And that's where slow cinema usually falls for me as well. And this certainly is, you know, one of the big tentpoles of that particular film movement, I would say. As maybe lowbrow as this sounds of me, I agree of like the conventions of genre filmmaking are what kind of really latch me to this film. I find this to be a fascinating examination of science fiction in maybe the most like mystical fantasy-like element we've ever seen. Like everybody gives that crown to Star Wars in a big way of like, this is very loose sci-fi. It's like space opera. It's science fantasy.
Yeah.
This feels science fantasy to me. Like in a way that Star Wars can't really touch.
No, I mean, as far as a room which grants its occupant their innermost desire goes.
Yeah.
This movie has that. And I would say probably no other movie has that. And at least if they do, not in this way.
Sure.
I do think there's something to be said for... Because I agree with you. I'm right there with you in that the first chunk of this really had me. Mm-hmm. Because it's very much something I'm very interested in. It's like we kind of get moving pretty quick into the zone. And I love everything the movie's doing. And I even love, you know, when the professor turns back up after they got separated from him and they're like, oh no, how'd you get here? It's a trap. And like all of that. And then the movie really slows down.
Yeah. It
really
stretches out that middle section.
And I think that's very intentional. Like as they get deeper and closer to this arrival point, it just gets slower. And so, which I do like. Like I think that there's something to be said for that structure, even just within this narrative, not just as like a form of slow cinema, but just like within this narrative. I think that's a very cool choice to be like, yeah, the closer you get to this, the slower and like, longer this is going to feel.
Having a narrative structure that feels like approaching a black hole is so fascinating.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like that. It feels like they're being spaghettified to an extent. And within their spaghetti form, a lot of kind of philosophical discussion happens.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And it didn't grip me in the way that I wanted it to. And in fact, what's really interesting is I was going back through and reading the quotes from the film, and I was like, oh man, like I really vibe with a lot of this. And I was like, why don't I remember them saying this? And I'm like, Probably because I was like a little too checked out.
Yeah.
Which
that was
is
a lifetime ago.
Which sounds terrible. It sounds
Hey,
terrible,
but it's subjective. That's what this is.
Oh, Barker, I know we put that in the intro. I don't think it's enough this
it's
time.
It's not true. Oh god. No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. I would say the dog's arrival and the conversations while sleeping, truly is where I was kind of like, uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
You're losing me. And it's not even there. It's not the movie's fault. This is, I can't, and I know we do this a lot where we get really qualifying and apologetic and whatever. But genuinely can't, reiterate enough how not the film's fault this is.
Sure.
It's just, it's not for me.
Yeah, I get that.
I will say that the film always looked incredible the entire time. I kind of asked you, because you'd started this about a week ago.
Yeah.
I just saw the first 10 minutes and then realized you didn't have the time or the bandwidth for it. But you did just mention the texture of even just the first.
Just that first opening scene in like their apartment is just like, you just look at it and you're like, man, I didn't know floors could look like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And walls and the bed and everything there.
Yes, which I'm glad you brought up. I forgot to mention it at the top of the episode, but for those of you who do listen on the regular, appreciate your patience. Had some personal life stuff going on that pushed us back, so thank you so much for being accommodating to us being back. But it was that I had tried to watch this when we had it in the schedule normally, and a lot was going on for me that I just didn't have the time for it. But B, it was another one that I was like, okay, this isn't one I can just kind of toss on and get through. I've got to like really sink my teeth into this thing. So we put it off until later. But even just those first few minutes, I was just like, boy, this is a textured image. Yeah.
And I think that it really, it grabs your attention. It does anything else really look like this?
Not really.
Because like you've seen Mirror, and like Mirror looks like its own thing. They have similar, obviously he has his the things that he does as a director, like with, slow push-ins and not a lot of like camera movement in that sense. And when it does, it's again, slow and kind of very intentional. But the sepia tone of the world outside of the zone and the decision to have that be kind of the real world in a sense, and then have the zone be what we would consider like the normal Earth.
Yeah.
Is a very interesting decision that I wish I'd read more about.
I am all but positive that there have been very in-depth essays written comparing this to Wizard of Oz, both in its like narrative structure and also its visual elements of like that particular like flavor of sepia tone feels very indicative of that film to me in a lot of big ways.
It also just feels, it feels kind of toxic. In a sense, it feels more kind of almost, in a sense, doing the world building just through the color and tint and how you shoot different aspects of the world is a really interesting idea of like, what if you told people, showed your audience the difference in the world and like kind of what this reality feels like, right? We talk about texture. We talk about the difference between this and the zone. It sets up such a distinct feeling of what it is to live here.
Yeah.
And then to have the zone be completely different. I think, show don't tell in the most, totally. To use that cliche, but truly.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And like, there are things I have to say that we can kind of get into, which is that, I wanted to ask you, which is, it feels like a summary of this movie is going to be kind of pointless. Like, I don't...
Yeah.
I think we can follow the basic structure and talk about, like, the elements of particular scenes that stand out to us, but, like, narrative summary as we've normally done it, it's, again, falling back on Jean-Louis Aymon, we can kind of sum it up in a couple sentences, And, like, what happens in those sentences is very interesting and intriguing, but... maybe more than any other movie we've talked about on the show so far. Like, this is one that go watch the movie and then listen to what to have to say, because what we have to say is going to be pretty inscrutable if you don't know what we're referencing. It's inscrutable when you watch the movie in some ways.
It is. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I would say so. Before we get into the non-summary, in that case, I just want to highlight that going into this is an adaptation of a book. It's an adaptation of, what is that called? Something, Roadside Picnic, written by Arkady and Boris Stugatsky. It was recommended to Tarkovsky by a friend, and he recommended it to a friend, saying, you might want to make this. When that fell through, he was like, okay, well, then I'm actually interested. He hoped it would allow him to make a film which conformed to the classical Aristotelian unity, a single action on a single location within 24 hours, single point in time. And he also viewed the idea of the zone as a dramatic tool to draw out the personalities of the three protagonists. Views of the stalker as he finds himself unable to make others happy. Which again, I'm like, I read that and I go, man, I bet I'm going to really relate to this film. And then it's so deeply ponderous in the best way that I almost came away with feeling like I misunderstood. Like, it almost had the feeling of like leaving a lecture and being like, I don't know if I got that.
Well,
I feel like I should have been taking notes. Like, truly leaving this film, I was like, I really should have been taking notes on this so that, you know.
It's a movie that makes you feel stupid. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
And I bring this up because maybe this will put you at your ease a little bit of like feeling like you don't understand it. There's a really great quote from Tarkovsky about this, which is, he says, "People have often asked me what the zone is and what it symbolizes, and have put forward wild conjectures on the subject. I am reduced to a state of fury and despair by such questions."
Yes, which is a fair point to make.
And he goes on to say, basically, he's like, it doesn't symbolize anything any more than anything else does in my films. Like, it's just a thing, you know?
Which is, you know, again, it's the David Lynch thing of, if I wanted to describe this to you in words, I would have written it. Like, the medium was chosen. This is a visual medium. This is a visual work of art that exists as it does for a reason. So any attempt to really kind of put words to it is inherently meaningless, which is a great thing to say on the We Talk About Movies show.
I'm obsessed with the phrase "reduced to a state of fury and despair" by such questions.
Truly. Yeah, that is fantastic. So I guess, and this is a question that I've tried to bring to the show over the last few episodes as well, that I appreciate this reminder from Tarkovsky. Parker, how did this movie make you feel? What did you feel from this movie? Even if it's not like, you know, obviously as we're talking, it makes you feel dumb. You can kind of get caught up in trying to decipher what it means. But what did it make you feel as you watched it? And we can dive into that a little bit more if you want as we go. But
it made me feel, and something that I think that is one of Tarkovsky's strengths, and an experience I had with The Mirror years ago, is like, surprisingly, it makes me feel the way I do when I just like sit out in nature next to like a running stream and it's just quiet. Like that's most of what this movie made me feel. And a lot of that has to do with the imagery in the zone and kind of, you know, the way that things are paced out. You know, I think it's miraculous that, so the movie's 163 minutes and there's 142 shots.
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts. That's crazy.
Well, and also you take into account the fact that they went out, they shot this. They brought all the film back.
Yes.
They got it developed. They realized that the guy who developed it wrong. He developed it for like a different film stock. And so to fix this, they fired that guy, obviously. And then Tarkovsky asked if he could make it a two-part film to get more funding and more budget and stuff. And then he went out and he basically just reshot the entire thing. And it has been said that the movie that we have now is completely different from what he had initially shot, which I find fascinating.
Which is crazy, too, because what he shot stuck around until the 80s, and then it got lost in a fire.
Wow.
And, like, there are a couple frames you can still find of it, and it's basically everything's super green tinted. Yeah. And, like, it's not unsalvageable. Like, people have color corrected, like, you could have fixed this, like, obviously with modern tools, you know, not what they had back then.
Right.
But, yeah, no, it's just, We had it there up until the, late 80s, and then it just disappeared.
Yeah, that's wild. And also feels very fitting for any form of Stalker to just vanish into nothingness.
Which, like, I think to your point of like them doing this again, I think speaks a lot to like the performances of this movie. Everybody's so damn tired in this. Everybody's so exhausted, and it makes sense. Like, yeah, they did this all 3 months ago, and now they're doing it again, and they're going back to the location that gave all of them cancer.
Yeah, and it did,
and it did.
I mean, that's a whole nother element to this that we probably won't get into, is just how much this ties into some sort of prophecy of what would happen with Chernobyl, and to an extent, like, it truly feels so informed by that event that happened 7 years after this movie was. They were exposed to some chemicals.
Yep.
And that is likely the source of Tarkovsky's cancer, which killed him.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie carries a lot of weight. I would say it's interesting you say it feels like sitting in nature. Obviously, a lot of this really did kind of remind me of Nausicaa to an extent, to refer to Miyazaki. And it has a lot of that feeling of Ma that Miyazaki talks about, of this feeling of just kind of stillness, right?
Yeah.
And he puts in his films a lot. This movie is like Stillness the movie, in the best way. And yet for me, how I felt watching it, I just felt heavy, and I felt tired.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting, especially when it plays into kind of like, like he's saying of, like Tarkovsky was saying of the Stalker, of like the Stalker found himself unable to make others happy. It kind of reaches this point where they're confronting him of like, why do you do this? Like, what is this? Like, what is your purpose? And he's like, they're like, you weren't going to bring us there. And it's kind of this question of like, I don't know, like he kind of confronts why he brings people here and never himself he himself never goes inside. Mm-hmm. Right. And like, does it actually, there's kind of just this feeling of like, there's this feeling of, for some reason, dread, even though everything we know about this and everything about the environment is, it's welcoming, it's more natural than the world they came from, and their ideal.
Mm. There was somebody that I saw online talking about this, and it was like such an interesting way of phrasing it. Maybe it kind of speaks to what you're talking about. He's like, this movie makes me feel like that photograph of the exposed core of Chernobyl, of like, you can literally see the core melting and seeping out. He's like, we're not supposed to be able to see that. And you think about it and you look at it, and just like, there is something about the quality of that image that just kind of gets in your gut of like, human eyes were never supposed to see this thing. And like, this person basically said, he's like, that's how Stalker makes me feel. Like, watching Stalker feels like looking at something I'm not supposed to see. Mm-hmm. It's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I couldn't figure out for the life of me, and I couldn't find anything when I looked it up, but like, they're either using a super weird lens or they built a bigger bed. Because that bed feels giant. Like, it just keeps going. And then, like, when it cuts back out to the wide, I'm like, oh, it's that big? Like, it's that... Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't find anything about like what specifically they did, but I was just like, there's some sort of trickery going on here. I think me and the audience are all good over here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna go back to prison specifically. Yeah. Yeah. She's like, she can't wait for you either, like our daughter. Uh he still leaves. I did again, one of those things of like you have to kind of the first bits of a movie set the tone and you have to adjust accordingly. Of her performance after he leaves of just like falling to the floor and writhing, and I was like, okay, we're in that kind of movie. All right. Okay, I'm set. It never exactly like it set this bar for me, and then it just nobody ever reaches that level, and I was like, huh, okay, interesting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love a funny little car. It's very, very engaging. Very good. A quick side note, coming back around to what you were talking about, because I had a dismissive answer to a very good question you had, and I want to ask you, which do you identify most with out of the three? And then I'll give you a real answer. No. Mm-hmm. Fair. Um. Yeah, like I feel I was unsure most of the movie. I was feeling stalkerish, and then there's some stuff we'll get to late. You call the police. I got him on the got him. Um, but there's some stuff near the end of the movie that I was like, I don't know. I'm maybe more of a professor. Like maybe this is how I would respond to this situation. You know? Mm, yeah. Hmm. It feels like, and again, maybe this is me drawing too wide of a comparison, but like it does feel like a very pointed comment of the state of worldwide film of like, I'm not making Star Wars for you. That was 2 years ago. I'm not there's that's not what this is gonna be. Sit down, relax, because even Solaris is a direct response to 2001. If he saw that movie, he's like, that's not the way I'd do it. So I don't know. There's nothing in my research that found to tie that together, but like the timing, within film history makes me think that maybe that could possibly be a read. Um, Not like it's interesting because maybe this was the intent. I don't know. Like I it feels bold of me to say that it was accidental because, even there's, some interview with like the art director in like 2000 for some DVD release. And he was like, Tarkovsky was a director who would not abide a misplaced flower. Like literally made them pick dandelions that had sprouted between the last time they'd been there because like, nope, get rid of the yellow. I don't want it. And so it feels, I can't say for sure this feels accidental, but I do find it interesting that when you get that shot of the barbed wire fences and like the military installation, the train just kind of vanishes into this bright white light, you know? Like, I'm like, is that the entrance to the zone? Because if so, that's rad as hell. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Yep. Yeah. I love the little cart. Mm-hmm. Just nothing. And then the camera just holds for another like 2.5 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's really good. I also like it's so interesting because again, coming back to the Wizard of Oz of it all, for my money, I think maybe one of the top 5 shots in cinema is Dorothy's reveal of Oz. Just that handoff between the double and then you opening the door and all that. And this is it's just a cut. It's just an edit, and suddenly we're in color, and like that's still just so effective. No, it's literally it's just no, it's just a cut. It's just so it's so stripped down its simplicity, but is still shockingly effective for sure, which I just think is really admirable. Totally. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Totally. Hmm. I think it's a gauze. It's a bandage. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. 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 It's. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. They got out. Totally. And to your point, like it's such an interesting marriage of narrative and like technical structure of this idea of like our path in is not going to be the same as our path out. Like that is the way it goes, and embracing that fully within like your editing and your film structure is again fascinating. Like it's very intriguing to kind of dive into that way. So yeah, no, fully agree. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I follow exactly what you're talking about, and I agree. It's just a fascinating concept. And like I was watching a video the other day about like the differences in children's media in America versus Soviet Russia from like the 60s to 80s. And something they talked about was that Western media precipitates itself off of interpersonal conflict. Like that is the driving force of narrative in Western culture and Western, media, particularly at the time. And they talked about how the kind of basic structure of Soviet storytelling is kind of interpersonal conflict. It's about what's going on for you personally and how that affects the people around you, but is not, well, this person has to come to blows with this person for something to happen. It has to be, well, no, it's you're coming to blows with yourself and everybody's going through that at the same time, you know? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because like totally, and like they do such interesting things with that. I think we're just gonna be jumping around in this, which is yeah, yeah, which is fine. But like they talk about that of there's this mention of Stalker's mentor, Porcupine, and we hear smatterings of all of this stuff of like, well, yeah, he led people through, something happened to him, something shifted. And at some point, the professor's like, yeah, he got like filthy rich, like just insanely rich. And then he hung himself. And later on, the writer, posits that he's like, I think what happened is your mentor came in with like his brother or something and had to, feed him to the machine to get in, wished for his brother to come back, came out and found out that his actual true heart's desire was money and he couldn't live with himself for that. Like this idea of you don't know what it is you actually want. And a kind of like Zen mentality of like, you need to master yourself completely before you go into this place so that you know what it is you're going into, so that you know what the reality is around you and what to expect in that room. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so interesting of like earlier on, there's a moment where the professor's like, you lead these people here and you don't go in. Why? And Stalker says, I'm content as I am, is his answer there. And then later on when they're getting the scuffle, he goes on and on about how he's like, look, I'm a failure and all the people I bring here are failures, but like I can help them. You know, like that's something I can do, so I'm not a failure anymore. It's fascinating. Yeah. It makes no damn sense. Compels me though. Yeah. Yeah. Other favorite moments, other favorite imagery. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I I love the professor's monologue at a certain point where he's like, a meteor struck, and slowly they realized it wasn't a meteor. Like it was a meteor that wasn't a meteor. And just again, like it's coming back to the whole science fantasy thing. It's so loose in its world building and so vague and like it's, you know, again, coming back to the Star Wars of it all, just because I feel like that's an anchoring point for some of our listeners of like, you know, it's something that I heard a lot of people, as divisive of the film was, that was consistently something people seem to like about The Last Jedi was its handling of the Force, of like bringing mysticism and vagueness and weirdness back to it, right? And this feels like that, of like you said, is it God? Is it aliens? Is it a temporal shift? Like, who knows? Like this feels like such of a kind of parallel thought process to something you'd see in the Twilight Zone. Like this premise is so that, and again, it's kind of looseness. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. It, again, I imagine that anything that's rattling off of my dome is not an original thought. I'm sure somebody else has made these comparisons, but like as you're talking about that, the thought came of like, yeah, there is an argument to be made that like the entire latter half of the 21st century is just humanity grappling with the fact that we exist with nuclear bombs now. Like that is something that exists and happened, and it's like we made that, and we fundamentally like could not comprehend what that was going to do. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure. We're just not going to talk about this anymore. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just the house. Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Zone as a character is so interesting to me. Man, why do we do this show? uh, uh. I love that he just turns to the professor. He's like, "You're my witness. I tried to stop him. Like I am not legally culpable." Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And like even later, like I love the way the characters respond to this. Of like the Stalker's like, the Zone gave you a warning. Like, congrats. Like you got spared. I don't know why it decided to warn you, but it did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was thinking so much about that in context of this, of like a comparison this movie gets a lot of, like, a film that is very much inspired by this. And for the record, a movie that I like is, Annihilation. A lot of people talk about that. And it's so interesting comparing. Yeah, right? It's like, but it's like, okay. But it's fascinating comparing those two in terms of like what modern appetite is for spectacle when it comes to danger. Like that movie has such visually arresting ways of making you aware of the inherent danger of the space that they're in. And this is just so, it just sets a mood. Like, you don't need to see somebody go through the meat grinder. You don't need to like watch the professor get spaghettified when he gets too close to the room the first time. Like it's just, it is a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it is so much a flavor of the time period that seems to have been lost. It's gone out of style. It's no longer in vogue to do this, but like I'm crazy about it. Like and anytime I watch something, and it's something that like I really appreciate about filmmakers like Robert Eggers, is that I think he does stuff like this a lot, where he's just like, okay, I'm going to just imply something to you, and that's going to put you way more on edge than immediately scary imagery. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, we'll just watch this. Mm-hmm. Hell yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it is a visual that is there for thematic purposes, not for like plot purposes. That's a crazy read of that moment. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Totally. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. And I totally, I agree, and it's something that like a quick side note of what you're talking about here. I find it interesting that like you and I both seem to be kind of pulled in that direction, both as viewers and as artists. Of I remember a few years back, you and I worked on a horror movie together, and I remember when I was showing that film to my committee of professors in grad school, there was some questions from people where they're just like, well, like it's not scary enough. Like I understand the concept you're going for, but like don't you want to make this punchier? And the conceit of the film is there's some entity in this theater that takes away all of your sound before it gets you. And like I stuck to my guns. I was like, no, this is what we find scary about this. Like it is, again, it is that kind of stripped down approach that I think speaks to you and I think of the things that are really vibing with us about this film specifically, right? Which is, you were talking about that and it just got me thinking about that. But coming back to your Annihilation point of the kind of more specifically horror and more kind of traditionally Hollywood ending and all these things, I do find it so fascinating that this film keeps presenting you with conflict points that you think are going to resolve in ways that you expect, in ways that we have been conditioned, and they never do, right? So like, for example, the writer approaching the room, you're like, something bad's gonna happen to that guy. So we're gonna establish the rules, and like, no, like he gets a warning. Same thing later, the professor's like, I lost my bag. I left my bag, and he's like, you can't go back. Like there is no going back, there's just going forward. And he doesn't even try to go back. They just go into, the dry, wet tunnels. And they're like, where did he go? Like, where is he? He's like, well, I guess the zone got him. Like, I just went back. And then they pop out the other side, and he's just there eating some food, and he's got his knapsack. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, just every time it presents you with what you think is going to be a westernized version of a conflict point, it pulls back and just makes you reevaluate. It's constantly a movie that is shifting your internal balance, and you are constantly having to adjust with it, which simultaneously makes it very engaging to talk about and exhausting to watch. Like it is a tiring movie experience, because it never, even with my general feeling I was talking about of like, oh, this makes me feel like I do when I'm outside in nature. I also mean that in a sense of like, I can't quite get my footing all the time. It's never flat, even ground. And I'm constantly having to adjust. So it is a deep, deep well you can dive into, but it's tiring to watch this movie, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Um, because they catch up with the professor. They have a little resting point with the dog, and like that weird, the whole kind of nature montage, the long tracking shot, like pointed at the ground, all of that stuff. We get like biblical recitings, all of that stuff. Then they go dark tunnel. Let's see. Yeah, it starts just getting very viscous in here. Let's see. They go down. It's the writer has a gun. Isn't that it? Isn't that what like propels them into this room? Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, they do. It's a lot of talking. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's the writer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes. He has a bomb in the knapsack. Just I like his reasoning of like, again, coming back to the initial metaphor, like it kind of it feels like somebody trying to kamikaze Oppenheimer's camp. You know, it's just like, I know what this is and nobody can have this. Like this cannot happen. And in context of like how it's described in the film, if I were in this world, you know, like I would certainly be worried about the wrong people getting in there and doing very bad things, you know? Granted, within the context of the world of the film, it doesn't give us a whole lot of context for that. Like it's not, you know, that would be more understandable if people had gone in there and done stuff and then the room caused that. Let's go take care of that. But just So true. So true. But yeah, like it just, I don't know. Like I reached this point and I was like, I mean, yeah, he's got a point. Like I could totally see where he's coming from. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anytime I watch somebody in this movie wade through or fall into a body of water, I just cringe because I'm just like, oh, they're getting so sick. Oh my God, they're getting so sick. Poor guys. Because like these are all like decommissioned power plants, and like there's a shot in the movie. It's the only shot that survives from the initial pass of the footage. Is there's like a shot of a giant field with like that like mossy kind of like, it's like kind of red stuff on top of the water. That is all pulp from a like nearby like paper manufacturing plant that just comes downstream and just sits there. And so like that's one of the only things that survives from the previous footage. But like, again, like you just look at that stuff and you're just like, oh God, like this is just, it is a wasteland in the most literal sense of the term that they were filming. It's just crazy. Mm-hmm. No, like I was looking through the Wiki. I've pulled up the IMDb summary because it's a bit more specific in all of its detailing. Because I agree, I read that and I was like, what are you talking about? Right. Yeah. Because like here, what it talks about is Stalker struggles with the professor trying to take away the bomb, with Ryder intervening several times, tearing Stalker away from the professor. Ryder brings all sorts of accusations against Stalker, questioning his motives and his honesty, to which a tearful Stalker responds that he is a failure and that all the people he brings to the room are also failures, but he can nevertheless help them. Really good. Like across the board, all three of these guys are really great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he's fantastic in this scene. But yeah, and then the professor tears apart the bomb, throws it all in the water, and like you said, like it's that shot. I like the shot of them just sitting on the ground and it like slowly pulling back and like the rain coming back through and then disappearing. Like, God, just such good dream logic in that shot that I'm just crazy about. It's just absolutely stunning. Right. Which, like, absolutely. And rightfully so, like, the iconic stuff from this is absolutely that room with the sand in it that you mentioned earlier. Like, stunning to look at. It's otherworldly. I don't know. There's something about that last shot in the zone that really gets me, though. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're just cut back straight in. Yeah. With their daughter, Monkey. Stalker. Monkey. Mm. They're fascinating. Like I love the shot of them walking down the river with her on his shoulders with like the power plant behind them. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Because again, it's so interesting of Monkey being the visual tie to the zone. Because earlier on, they're in the zone, and like the professor, like the writer's like, well, what do you know about this guy anyway? He's like, not much. Like he does this for a lot. And he's like, you know, his daughter's like a cripple because of this place, you know, like it's affected him and it's affected his family in a big way. And that's really like, we just get a passing mention of it. And then we meet her proper, you know, we see her at the very beginning of the movie asleep, but like when she is conscious, we get color. And that's so interesting for like the final shot of the movie, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, like I just, that them down there is nice. His wife, like, delivering the monologue to camera is such an interesting moment, you know, that I really don't know what to make of. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry you had to see me like that. I just wanted to touch base on that. Yeah. Everything else I looked at said monkey. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. No, like it's, yeah, this is just, you know, it's interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. This is another thing that I thought was very odd that it's listed in the Wikipedia summary of like, some people try to read as like, well, the train passing gives it ambiguity. Like, is it the train that's moving? No, like the glasses are so clearly moving. And then when the train comes, the liquid moves a lot. Like she's moving them. Um, I, it was so interesting watching this because I had seen this scene. I didn't know it belonged to this movie. Like I had watched this in some Cinefix list years ago. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I'd forgotten that it was Stalker. And so on the one hand, I was disappointed that I knew this. But then the second, like, just that shot of her showed up and I audibly gasped. I said, oh, that's from this? Like, oh my God. Fascinating. Just like, it's so, again, sci-fi fantasy. I think it's rad as hell. I love ending on this note, which really just, it for me is kind of the antithesis to what you were talking about earlier of the jump cut from them all sitting on the ground outside of the room to the cafe could, like you said, fully imply that, like, well, did any of this happen? Like, did he talk to them about the zone and talk them out of it? And like, is the zone even real? Is this a philosophical conversation they had? And like, it feels like this final moment is like, no, the zone is real and the zone is scary and the zone is supernatural and it does weird things. Like, it feels like such a stake in the ground. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Uh-huh. Totally. Mm-hmm. He's got notes. Wait a second, he's unlocked it. Mm. Whoa. Ah. Mm. Mm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally. He's finally getting it. Whoa. I get it. Well, it's also very interesting to pair this with Ode to Joy. Like, that's such an interesting choice as well. Like, this moment happening, you know? It's just like, it's a great ending. Like, genuinely, I love any movie that, like, the final shot leaves you with, like, just one last thing, one little twist right there at the end that, like, it is, again, you know, using anchor points that people might be familiar with, like, it's kind of my personal feeling about, as somebody who loves The Last of Us, as, like, you know, the video game. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on in the sequel, but the end moment of The Last of Us is such a good moment that, like, I think there is so many things that the franchise blockbuster brain that has existed culturally is such a huge detriment to individual stories sometimes. Of, like, this moment I love so much, not because it is like an MCU tease of, like, whoa, this is the next, like, it's just, it is a one final wrinkle. It is one thing that you are left with and have to, like, keep going. And this whole idea of, well, you're here and we're not going to expand on this. Like, you are left with a question. You are left lingering, thinking and feeling about this. And it's something I love about the ending of The Last of Us, and something that I really like about this too is like, I love a story that ends with just that little, it gives you one more wrinkle before it goes to just taste and never get an answer to. And like, you don't need an answer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One more thing. Man, he's been... I didn't know that the zone was just filled with all of our favorite, big name character detectives. This is great. Somebody make a webcomic. I need it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a thinking movie. Whoa. That's a thinking movie. I love that. Yeah. Any other final thoughts? Yeah, we got a full character arc this one. That's so exciting. No, I think I've covered everything I wanted to say. Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. Okay. Yep. Okay. Wow, welcome to NPR. This is exciting. Mm. Okay. Okay, I see. Mm. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. Mm. Rubles is nice. Yeah. That should be rubles. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would agree. I think it's this one is like um this one feels more film school to me. This one feels like, I don't know, like this is a curio of film bros around the world, I would say, more than maybe others. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. No, not really. No. um, I think like coming back to this quote from Tarkovsky, the second half of it is that the zone is a zone. It's life, and as he makes his way across it, a man may break down or he may come through. Whether he comes through or not depends on his own self-respect and his capacity to distinguish between what matters and what is merely passing. And that's like his opinion of the zone. Like that is the allegory and symbolism that he wants to. He's like, the zone is a zone. It's life. And everything that I could find about like his goals of what he wanted out of, his body of work seems to be that he wants to get people to think, he wants to present interesting ideas and not proselytize to people. He wants to leave it open to interpretation and discussion. And I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, like there is so many things you can drill into with this movie because it's such interesting imagery and writing without any concrete answers, right? Like it's something I've talked to my students about of if there is textual evidence for an interpretation you have of a film, it's a valid interpretation, no matter what. Like you can stretch it as far as you want. Where it falls apart is if you are bringing in stuff that just is about whatever, right? Like 100%. Like the example that I gave to people was like, if you tried to make the argument that Finding Nemo is about worker-employer relations of the Industrial Revolution, like I'm like, I don't really think that there's anything in there that really you can latch onto for that, Seize the means of production. Exactly, yeah. But all this to say that I think like when a movie gives you such a wide canvas to play in that allows for really in-depth comparisons, like a really in-depth analysis, I should say, which seems to be kind of what the film is trying to do. So in that regard, I think it succeeds. Like it is a movie that gets you to think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally. No. Yeah. Totally. I agree. No, totally on board with that. Is it doing what it's trying to do better than Citizen Kane? Why do we do this to ourselves? I just like to watch you squirm. That's, yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You gotta leave that alone. Yeah, come on. Okay. Well, if it gives you strength in numbers, that would have been my answer as well. I think. Yes, I would. I'm not going to answer. I will leave you alone in this. No, I would also give this point to Stalker. I think. It feels meticulous. It feels so purposeful. Whereas even some things like I know that Kane also is like an auteur text in a lot of ways. But there are things that film kind of feel like a happy accident sometimes. Nothing in this film feels accidental. Mostly because they did it twice. Yeah, they had a huge, freaking couldn't ask for a better one. Yeah, totally. It's like, it's the litmus test that I put up against all the others of like, am I more likely to put this film on or Citizen Kane on for a revisit? And I don't know, like in some ways, obviously, I'm sure I will return to this film at some point in my life. Like I teach film. I'm gonna brush up against this film, But in some ways, it almost kind of feels like one of those rare movies where like once is enough. Like it's just like genuinely like you're touched by this thing and you think about it a lot, and that's it. Like there's no going back to the zone, almost. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The poster child for that for me would be our viewing of Memoria. I was like, I think that fully stands as like cool. Never again. Like not because it was a bad movie, just because it was like a singular experience. So I'm gonna say I think this point goes to Kane. And maybe that is fully on account of Kane is just doing things I'm more familiar and more comfortable with. And while I am interested in like stretching myself as, in the kind of art that I engage with and learn about, uh not in this particular flavor, Again, this is one of those things that like personally, and I know you've got issues with it, but like personally, Kane just kind of bores me. This movie exhausts me. Like this movie is a capital G great film that is tough to get through for me. So I think for me, Kane gets the point. Mm. Okay. Oh, thank God. I know, right? Mm-hmm. No. Yeah, I'm not gonna do it. Listen, the show doesn't exist unless we have good cop, bad cop. I'm really thinking about this. You know, taking the step back, I think it is. There's something about this that feels transcendent. There's something about this that feels on a level that a lot of other films just aren't operating on. And it doesn't mean that, like, it's holier than thou in any sort of way. It just, it's got a lot more on its mind. And I think that movies that have a lot on their mind and movies that are, you know, and again, like we've talked about, we've got popcorn fluff on our list that we've looked at over the years. Totally, exactly. And so, like, not in comparison to the rest of the list, but just as we've talked about, like, you have to take it as, like, okay, this film versus Kane. I think it is. I think it's better. Okay, would you like to say it? Yeah. That's the real question. See, that's your problem to figure out. I edit the episodes, you put together the list. Yeah, I'll just be looking at him like, Bennion, what have you done? I don't know what to do. I panicked. Yeah. All right. Well, this is fun. I was very excited to talk to you about this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's crazy to me that we're on year 3 and we haven't done this. Shocking to me. We got a preamble. Relax, you're still here. I was just thinking about this. I was like, you know, there's so many more entry points, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And yet we were still friends. No, we can't. Sorry. I refuse. Yeah, it played at the Broadway and then disappeared. Next time, as my birthday pick, we are watching one of my top 4 films, 1992's Porco Rosso, directed by the great Hayao Miyazaki, who is, on the record, my favorite film director. And I don't know, again, like, I fully get why, you know, the films that we watched make a lot of sense, and Max has been wonderfully meticulous in curating these and, you know, coming up with ideas, and we've worked out the schedules together, but, like, yeah, middle of year 3 is when we finally get to, like, a huge filmmaker for both of us. Yeah, yeah, right. That would be my argument. But yeah, if we're talking Ghibli output, it's got to be this or Nausicaa. Like, even Castle in the Sky is a little bit more well known. Yeah. I believe so. Hmm. It's a banger. I'm so excited to talk about it. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah, congratulations. We'll celebrate. Uh-huh. Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Yeah, congratulations. We'll celebrate.